emotions influence everything we do today. People tend to say it just didn't feel right. And a feeling, I associate feeling with emotion. And we can make a lot of bad decisions when we're emotional. Now you might think breaks. I'm under pressure, I need to decide now. But majority of the time, especially when the stakes feel high or you've been wrestling with a choice for a while, stepping back can actually be a productive thing to do. And a lot of times we completely skip the consequences of decisions. So that's why people are so able to make bad decisions, because they don't consider the consequences of their decision. If I feel a certain way about a certain thing, either I'm going to say it up front or I'm just not going to participate if I feel like it compromises who I am. The more ironic part about this is that the more we try to make the perfect decision, the more overwhelmed we can become. Don't fall into the trap of endlessly searching for that one more piece of data that magically will make the right, obvious choice. Deadlines create focus. They provide a clear point in time in which a decision needs to be made, which helps to concentrate your efforts and prevents endless. Good decision making is a skill that can be developed. And just because of where you are currently in decision making, you can be 10 times better. Hey guys, I'm back with another episode of Mental Wealth. This podcast is used to express thoughts, experiences, and lessons. I aim to be as transparent as possible. If you enjoy an episode, please don't forget to like, comment, and tell a friend. Thank you. Have you ever wanted to make the right decision but you just felt like it was impossible? This can happen for various reasons. In today's episode, I plan to talk about how to make the right decision. So what made me want to make this episode is because I had one of my friends hit me up and he was asking me about how to make the right decision. And he asked me, did I make a video on it? So I was like, yeah, you know what? I feel like that builds on what I've been doing lately with active listening, disagreeing, and of course following that up with making the right decision. What really interested me with this topic is, what do they say? In a day you make like thousands of decisions and stuff, and you make micro decisions like getting out of bed, deciding to get water, brushing your teeth, and you have other, I would say, more impactful decisions like pursuing different opportunities like jobs, going to college, and various other, I would say, more complex decisions. Good decision making improves life satisfaction and reduces stress. This happens because when you make the right decisions, or not making the decision in a timeful manner increases the amount of stress because you're left thinking about it. You're second guessing yourself. You're like, what if I do it, or what if I don't do it, and so forth. So that's where your anxiety can kick in and various other things that you could be faced with. So let's understand decision making. Decision making is affected by your cognitive biases, your emotional influences, and the role of your intuition. So you have, with cognitive biases, you have confirmation bias. Of course, you need to feel like. And confirmation bias refers to the tendency for somebody to seek out information that's already confirming what they think. And this also makes it harder to make great decisions because you're just following up with whatever decision that you feel is right with finding information that supports that decision. And I've noticed that this can become a problem because we tend to find information that supports what we already think and not think of other outcomes or other information. And this can block your ability to make a sound decision. And then you go into emotional influences. Emotions influence everything we do today. People tend to say it just didn't feel right. And a feeling, I associate feeling with emotion. And we can make a lot of bad decisions when we're emotional. I mean, you're sad, so you might want to sit in bed all day, or just not really talk to people. Or when you're angry, you kind of tell people off, cuss people out, be a lot meaner than you would normally be. And this stops you from being able to be the best version of you, because emotions, if you're led by your emotions and not any logic. I'm not saying logic emotion isn't part of decision making, but if this is the only thing that you use to make decisions, 9 times out of 10 majority of decisions are going to be bad. And then the role of intuition. I notice with myself, sometimes we're able to feel deep down what we know what is the right decision to make and what's the wrong decision to make. And we either ignore this intuition or we follow this intuition. And sometimes your intuition can be wrong. You can feel like somebody's a bad person. I know this, well, for the most part, when I watch movies and then you're watching the movie, you're like, this guy has to be the bad guy. There's no way he's just nice and all this and everything. Sometimes your intuition is right. And I would say your intuition is right a lot more times than it's not. A lot of times we're making the initial right decision with our intuition, but we need to support it with information, and it's harder to support what you're feeling inside, and so we tend to not act on our intuition. But what I was told growing up that intuition is like God telling you what to do, and you have the choice to follow your intuition or ignore it and face the consequences. And a lot of times we pick the other, and we face consequences. Now let's talk about the role of rational and emotional decisions. So I just finished talking about rational, logical, and emotional gut feelings when making decisions. I've just also talked about stress and fatigue and how they can really muddy the water and make it harder to choose wisely. A great tool for that in our decision making arsenal is taking breaks. And I know this may seem kind of cliche or like that's not realistic, but it's very more real than. Now you might think breaks. I'm under pressure. I need to decide now. But majority of the time, especially when the stakes feel high, or you've been wrestling with a choice for a while, stepping back can actually be a productive thing to do. And I know this is like, no, I need to make a decision now, especially when time is of the essence, and you have to make a sound decision. But when you think about it, when you're stressed, exhausted, what happens to your thinking? Your rational brain, the one that carefully weighs pros and cons, starts to get foggy. And it's harder to focus and analyze decisions objectively and not subjectively. And just to see the bigger picture. When you latch on to the first seemingly viable option just to end the mental strain, even if it's not the best one, it hurts you. And dealing with the emotional side, fatigue and stress can amplify our feelings. So if you're feeling sad, it can make it feel way worse. If you're happy, it can make it feel very out of place, I would say. But a minor annoyance can feel like a major catastrophe. And your gut feeling, which can be a valuable signal, becomes distorted by your anxiety or you just being tired. You might make an impulsive decision based on the short-term emotional relief rather than long-term benefit. Now, breaks are important because they allow your brain to reset. Stepping away gives your prefrontal cortex a chance to recover from the mental exertion. It's like hitting the mental refresh button. That's the way I try to think of it. When you return, you're more likely to have clearer thinking, improved focus, and a better ability to analyze the situation logically. You might even see options you didn't even consider before. And this is a big part of it. Secondly, breaks help you regulate your emotions. When you're emotionally charged or drained, taking a break provides a space to process those feelings. It prevents you from making decisions purely out of frustration, fear, or desperation, which is very prevalent. A little distance can offer a more objective perspective on your emotional state and how it might be influencing your choices. Thirdly, breaks can foster better integration of logic and intuition. Sometimes that gut feeling needs time to simmer and align with the rational analysis. And a break allows your subconscious to work on the problem in the background. You might find that when you return, your intuition feels clearer and more aligned with logical consideration. Now, the best way to make the most of these breaks is it doesn't have to be a long vacation. Even short breaks can incredibly benefit you. I would get up, walk around, step outside for fresh air. This is what I do. Listen to a song or do something completely unrelated to the decision just for 5 to 10 minutes. And the key is to fully disengage from the problem. Now, if you're not fully disengaged, then you're just bringing your work with you. It's like doing your homework on a bus or doing your homework in class instead of doing it when you should be doing it. When you feel the pressure mounting and the mental fog setting in or your emotions just starting to take over, remember the power of pause. Taking a break is a sign of weakness or procrastination. It's a strategic move to ensure you're making the most informed and aligned decisions possible. Now, some strategies for making better decisions. We have just define the problem. So you sit down and ask yourself, write it down. What is my immediate problem in this situation? Because a lot of times we don't understand what the problem is, so that makes it harder for us to fix what the problem is. If your immediate feeling might be the problem is that I'm overwhelmed, or the problem could be something completely unrelated to what the actual problem is. Like your immediate problem might be that you feel overwhelmed, but the real problem is that you just didn't study. And so first thing you want to do is identify the core issue and then break down the complex problem into smaller parts. So I would think about different ways that I can accomplish and fix this problem, or just break it down into small steps. So, all right, I'm going to do this first, and this second, and this third. A lot of times we look at the whole thing and then we get overwhelmed. I kind of see this as information paralysis too. A lot of times we're so informed, we are paralyzed with the ability to make the decision, just because we just have so much information, and a lot of information might be unrelated to this immediate problem, or we get paralyzed with information, and a lot of information is not useful. That's what I've seen in today's world. We consume a lot of information that we don't need. But what you want to do is gather information. I would research and analyze the data on my immediate problem that I'm dealing with. And then another thing you want to do is seek diverse perspectives. So to avoid confirmation biases, which is just following information or seeking information that supports what you already think, which doesn't really help you, I would seek information that doesn't immediately support what I'm trying to say, and see different perspectives on the same issue, because there are different perspectives on everything, and there's plenty of ways to look at various life circumstances or problems that we're faced with, and a lot of times we can just only see it from our perspective. And I mean, another strategy that you can do is identify and evaluate the options. So you can brainstorm multiple solutions. Of course, I always weigh pros and cons. I consider, of course, the consequences of this. So I can look at, what is it, a problem that I have with, okay, let me talk about accepting job offers. So, of course, you want to look at all the different job offers you have. Then you can, of course, all jobs are not the same. So then you can look at the pros and cons of a different situation, like maybe distance from your home, salary, health, and so forth. And then you can consider the consequences of, all right, if I work here and not here, or if I commit to this school and not this school, what are the long-term effects of this? And a lot of times we completely skip the consequences of decisions. So that's why people are so able to make bad decisions, because they don't consider the consequences of their decision. If you consider the consequences of your decision, you probably wouldn't make that bad decision. Another strategy is aligning decisions with your values and goals. So this starts with just prioritizing what truly matters and what matters to you as a person, and what values that you hold dearly to you, and how this affects you. And if I've always learned, if I have to compromise my values for it, then I'm doing the wrong thing. So I've always been big on just not compromising who I am. If I feel a certain way about a certain thing, either I'm going to say it up front, or I'm just not going to participate if I feel like it compromises who I am. And then another thing you can do is consider the long-term implications. Just like I said earlier, a lot of people are able to make so many horrible decisions because they don't even look at the long-term effects of that bad decision. And just bad decisions can compound, and good decisions can compound. People tend to be faced with more compounded bad decisions than the compounded good ones. And a lot of times when you make a decision, you want to see immediate results, but a lot of times the results of your decision won't show up until it's possible like a year later, maybe 2 years later. Then you look back and you're like, oh, that's why all these things happen. And sometimes things can work in your favor and sometimes they don't. Now, I think it's very important into overcoming decision-making challenges. The first thing is dealing with indecision and paralysis. So I just finished exploring and talking about how gathering information and weighing options. But what happens when you get stuck in this stage? When you gather so much information and analyze so many possibilities that you feel completely frozen. That analysis paralysis, or information paralysis. But it can be a real roadblock in making any decision at all. The more ironic part about this is that the more we try to make the perfect decision, the more overwhelmed we can become. We get caught in the loop of overthinking, constantly seeking more information, or reevaluating the same data without actually committing to a choice. And it's like being on a hamster wheel, running as hard as you can but going. So how do we break free from this indecision? The first thing we want to do is recognize the perfect information rarely exists. If you want everything to be perfect before you start, you'll never start. We often get trapped in the pursuit of absolute certainty. And in most real world scenarios, there will always be some level of uncertainty and risk involved. Accepting this can be a first step to moving forward. Secondly, set a good enough threshold. Like, all right, that's good enough. Instead of aiming for the absolute best outcome, define what a satisfactory outcome would look like. And so you can look at the problem like, all right, if I at least get to here, or if it's at least this much, then I'm fine with it. But if you're seeking 100,000 to start a job and you just graduate, that's going to be very hard. But you might settle at 85 or something, 75 or something. But what are the key criteria that need to be met for you to feel comfortable with a decision? Once you've got a few options that meet this threshold, you can feel more confident in choosing one. Thirdly, limit your information gathering. At some point, more information stops being helpful and starts contributing to this paralysis. And decide beforehand how much research you will do and stick to it. Don't fall into the trap of endlessly searching for that one more piece of data that magically will make the right obvious choice. Fourthly, trust your intuition to a certain degree. Now, I'm not telling you to always trust your intuition, but trust it to a certain point. But while I've talked about the rational analysis, don't completely throw away your gut feeling, especially if you've already done your due diligence. Sometimes that inner voice can provide valuable guidance, and particularly when logical options seem equally viable. Finally, break down the decision into small steps. If the overall decision feels overwhelming, can you make smaller related decisions first? This can create a sense of progress and building momentum. And for example, if you're trying to change careers, you might first decide what kind of industry you're interested in, then research companies within that industry. And this leads us directly to a crucial technique for overcoming indecision: the importance of setting deadlines. Think about it. Without a deadline, the analysis paralysis can drag on indefinitely. The mental hamster wheel keeps spinning. A deadline creates a sense of urgency and forces you to move from deliberate to action. Well, from deliberation to action. It allows you to say to yourself, well, it's like saying to yourself, okay, I've done my research, I've considered my options, and now it's time to choose. Why are deadlines so effective? Deadlines create focus. They provide a clear point in time in which a decision needs to be made, which helps to concentrate your efforts and prevents endless procrastination. Deadlines also can reduce overthinking. Knowing that you have a limited time frame encourages you to move forward through the analysis phase and commit to a choice. It discourages the endless reevaluation of the same information. And finally, deadlines can facilitate action. Once a deadline arrives, you're compelled to make a decision, even if it feels imperfect. This breaks the cycle of paralysis and allows you to move forward and experience the consequences of your choice, which can provide valuable learning. The best way to implement a deadline is to be realistic but firm. Set deadlines that give you enough time to gather information and consider your options, but not so much time that you fall back into overthinking. My fault, guys, for going on kind of like a rant. But so back to me continuing to how to overcome decision making, managing fear of failure, and reframing failure as a learning opportunity, and building resilience. When I look at failure and I look at all the times I failed, or I wouldn't say quote unquote failed, but I learned a lesson. Just like I talked about on previous episodes, I try to look at losses as lessons. And the more you're able to do that, the more you're able to change your perspective. I see in life, this might just be me, but as long as I'm in good health, I'm able to walk and make my own decisions. I haven't really lost anything. And I think it's important just to be grateful. And when you're grateful, it makes you appreciate even the losses sometimes. And I know in the moment, you're like, why me? Why is this happening? But as time goes on, you'll understand exactly why these things happen, exactly why situations played out like that. And like I say all the time, you learn nothing from winning. You learn everything from losing. And because, of course, if things go your way, you don't really have to figure out what would have happened if it didn't go my way. What would have been my other decision? What would I have done? But when things don't go your way, you're able to experience all this, and you're able to build resilience through having to lose. And just like I see all the time. I remember I went to my brother's game a couple of weeks ago, and they beat some team, but one of the kids did want to shake their hands. And I'm like, there are a lot of lessons that are taught in sports, because life's not going to go your way, but you have to still shake yourself off and shake hands. Because I remember at first, my little brother, and I get on him, I stay on him. But I remember they lost their first 2 games, and it was bad. I'm like, oh my God, I don't think you guys can. I don't know what's going on. But I remember after every game, they still got up and shook hands. And this is important, especially for building up young men, because you can't be a sore loser, and you can't be a sore loser in life. And this actually gets you nowhere. So they went from, of course, having sad handshakes to happy handshakes, because ever since that point, they've been on a winning streak of it lately. But yeah, sometimes you just gotta shake yourself off. Also, dealing with pressure from others. Set boundaries and prioritize your personal values. I know I've done an episode on setting boundaries, but there are various different boundaries that we have with people. You have financial boundaries, actual physical boundaries, emotional boundaries, when people come just spilling how they feel onto you and so forth. But we're affected by various boundaries, but it's important to you to set them. And another part of this, dealing with imperfect information. Accept that there's always some uncertainty in every decision you make. It's inevitable. And you're really, the way I look at it is like you're really just making informed guesses. So you inform yourself over and over again or whatever. But you're really just making informed guesses, because you will never know the outcome of every decision you make. Because you could make the decision, it could be some unrelated circumstance that happens, and you're completely left in a different situation than you would have thought. And I think the best way is to cultivate a decision-making mindset. This starts with just developing self-awareness. Understand your decision-making style. And there's various styles that people have with making decisions. Some people are all emotion, some people are all intuition, and some people are all information. But I think it's important to incorporate some of each of these and not just be all one thing, but just understand who you are and recognize your biases. What also helps with this is practicing mindfulness and presence, and just staying grounded in the moment. Never get too high on things, never get too low on things, and reducing your impulsive reactions. And I used to be all impulse before I, worked on myself and everything. But if somebody said something to me, I would just snap and everything. But I had to realize, I'm like, people are going to say good things and bad things about you when you're here and you're gone. You're probably going to hear more bad things when you're gone. Just being realistic. So now it's almost, as long as you don't say it directly to me, it kind of doesn't really affect me, because I'm like, oh well, I can't change everybody's decision about how they feel about me. Everybody's entitled to their own truth, and just because it's your truth doesn't make it the truth. And a lot of people have a hard problem with that, but your truth is different from the actual truth, and a lot of people can be programmed into believing that's their truth. Another great tool is building confidence through practice. And I feel like there's no way to build confidence without practicing something. You have to become, by actually practicing it, it makes you more sure of the things you're doing and why you're doing things a certain way. But if you don't practice it, of course, the uncertainty in the situation and you not being prepared helps make this worse. So I would start with smaller decisions and move up. And another great thing that you should do in this is just reflect on your past decisions. So I reflect on all the good decisions that I made and all the bad decisions. I tend to reflect more so on the bad decisions, because I'm like, I really can't learn much from the good decisions I made. But every bad decision I made, I'm able to really think about them and not blame somebody else, but just blame me. And of course, like I just said, learn from your past decisions. I would analyze the past outcomes and what would have happened. So I did this, but what would have happened if I had done it this way? And it helps you adjust for future strategies. You don't take anything away from this. I want you to understand that good decision making is a skill that can be developed. And just because of where you are currently in decision making, you can be 10 times better. You're just at the start. If you enjoyed today's episode, please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll be back with you for another one. Peace.